You know that little device that's probably in your pocket or your hand right now? Yeah, that one. Have you ever really stopped to think about how it's changing you? Not just how you communicate, but how it's fundamentally rewiring you from your body all the way to your brain. It turns out the science behind it is both kind of fascinating and honestly a little scary. So let's get into it. To really get a sense of just how big this is, let's start with a number: 6 billion. Out of around 7 billion people on the entire planet, a whopping 6 billion own a cell phone. Just let that sink in. There is no other technology in all of human history that has been adopted this fast or this widely. It's just unprecedented. But here's a little bit of context that really puts that 6 billion number in a whole new light. It turns out more people on Earth have a cell phone than a working toilet. I'm not kidding. When a piece of tech becomes more common than basic sanitation, you just know its impact on our lives is going to be absolutely massive. Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at just how attached we've become to this thing, our constant companion. Then we'll dive into the physical price our bodies are paying and what's happening to our brains with all those likes. We'll even see how it's messing with our sleep. But hey, it's not all doom and gloom. There's a surprising upside we'll uncover before we figure out, how we can start to redefine this relationship on our own terms. All right, first up, our constant companion. And calling it that might even be an understatement. For so many of us, it's the very first thing we look at when we wake up and the absolute last thing we see before we go to sleep. So how much of our lives does it actually take up? The answer? Well, it might just shock you. On average, people spend 4.7 hours a day on their phone. Take a second and think about that. That's almost a third of your waking hours spent staring at a tiny screen in your hand. This constant, nonstop engagement is really the foundation for all the changes we're about to explore. So what really happens when we spend almost 5 hours a day hunched over like that? Well, it leads us right to our first major consequence: the physical price. Yeah, all that time spent with our device has real, measurable, and pretty painful effects on our bodies. So what does that cost exactly? And believe me, it's way more than just tired eyes. We're talking about some serious, long-term physical strain that, let's be honest, a lot of us are probably already starting to feel. Here's a wild way to think about it. That angle your head is at when you're looking down at your phone, it puts a strain on your spine that's literally equivalent to having an 8-year-old kid sitting on your neck. Yeah. Imagine carrying that weight around hour after hour, day after day. It's no wonder we now have a condition called tech neck. And it's not just our necks and backs. Our eyes are taking a huge hit, too. Back in the 1970s, about a quarter of people in North America had myopia. That's nearsightedness. Today, that number has doubled. It's nearly half the population. And get this, in some parts of Asia, it's as high as 90%. Researchers are pretty convinced this dramatic jump is directly linked to all of our increased screen time. Okay, the physical costs are pretty clear, but what's going on inside our heads is maybe even more profound. I mean, if we know it's causing us physical pain, why is it so ridiculously hard to just put the phone down? Well, the answer is all about our brain chemistry and this powerful little engine called the compulsion loop. At the very heart of this is the compulsion loop. It's a super simple but incredibly powerful reward cycle. You do something, say you check a notification, and your brain gets a tiny little hit of a feel-good chemical called dopamine, and that little hit makes you want to do it again. It might sound harmless, but it's the exact same brain wiring that drives addictions to things like gambling. Let's break it down using an example we all kind of know: the Candy Crush effect. So you achieve a small goal, you clear a line, boom, your brain gets a little burst of dopamine. Then the game instantly gives you something new, a new level, new candies, boom, another dopamine hit, this time from the novelty. Our brains are hardwired to chase what's new, and these apps are designed to exploit that instinct perfectly. And what happens when you have this loop running all day long? Our entire behavior changes. The second we feel a moment of boredom, our brain knows exactly where to get a quick and easy fix. That's why a staggering 93% of young people say they use their phones specifically to avoid being bored, instead of, just letting their mind wander for a minute. We've literally trained ourselves to reach for a digital pacifier. And all of this has led to a brand new, very real, and very modern anxiety: nomophobia. It's that genuine fear or that little pang of panic you feel when you suddenly realize you don't have your phone with you. I mean, if you've ever frantically patted down your pockets thinking you've lost it, you know exactly what this feels like. And it gets even deeper than that. The phone's own transmissions can literally change the electrical activity in your brain. So think of your brain as having different gears. You've got your focused gamma waves for when you're really concentrating, and then you have your more relaxed alpha waves for when you're just chilling out, mind wandering. Incredibly, studies show that just having a phone transmitting nearby can boost those alpha waves, basically nudging your brain into a less focused, daydreamy state, even when you're trying to pay attention. So, we've seen how our phones mess with us physically and psychologically during the day. But their influence doesn't just stop when the sun goes down. In fact, one of the biggest problems with our phones is how that little glowing screen totally messes with our sleep. The main bad guy here is the blue light coming from our screens. See, this light basically tricks our brains into thinking it's still daytime. It throws our circadian rhythms. That's our body's natural internal clock completely out of whack. It also stops our body from producing melatonin, which is the hormone that tells us, hey, it's time to sleep. The result? It gets harder to fall asleep, the sleep we do get isn't as deep, and over time, this has been linked to really serious health issues like diabetes, cancer, and obesity. So what are we supposed to do? Well, the experts at places like Harvard Medical School have a really clear recommendation. Make the last 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed completely technology-free. It sounds simple, but it can make a massive difference in your sleep quality. So put the phone down and maybe pick up an actual book. Okay, I know. We've gone through a lot of the negatives here, and it all sounds pretty grim. Technic, nomophobia, no sleep. But is the smartphone really just the villain in this story? The answer, maybe surprisingly, is no, not at all. So let's totally switch gears and look at the other side of this. For millions of people, especially in poor and minority communities, the smartphone isn't a distraction, it isn't an addiction, it's a lifeline. Think about this for a second. For 7% of Americans, a smartphone isn't just a convenient secondary device. It is their only way to get on the internet. It is their primary connection to the entire modern world. And what are they doing with that connection? We're talking about essential, life-changing stuff. Things like online banking, looking up critical health information for their kids, or searching and applying for jobs. This isn't just scrolling through social media. This is a powerful reminder that while some of us are worried about our phone habits, others are using the exact same device to build a better life. And that really brings us to the heart of the matter. The smartphone isn't good or evil. It's just a tool, a really powerful tool, sure, that can be a source of anxiety for one person and a lifeline to opportunity for another. The most important thing to realize is that the balance of that power, well, it's in our hands. There is absolutely no denying it. Your phone is changing you every single day. So the real question isn't if it's changing you, but how you're going to choose to manage that change. It's about being intentional, about deciding whether this device is going to work for you or if you're going to work for it.
Subscribe to my channel for simple, science-backed health tips. No calories, just smart hydration and portion control.